The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with an unfamiliar sound. Panic. Ambassador Excelfor's crystalline form pulsed with rapid colors of distress as the latest reports scrolled across the quantum displays. Another Class 1 civilization had gone dark. The Proxima Centauri Alliance, masters of artificial intelligence and automated governance, had fallen silent like dozens before them. The quarantine protocols have failed, announced High Minister Kveda, her bioluminescent tendrils dimming with each word. The technological plague continues to spread. The Arcturus Defense Network has reported complete systems failure across 87% of their territories. The assembled representatives of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Their mighty empires, built upon millennia of technological progress, were crumbling before an enemy they couldn't even understand. Admiral Zhang Wei of Earth sat quietly in her corner, representing humanity's developing civilization status. The other species had always viewed Earth with a mixture of pity and amusement. A planet that had barely achieved interstellar travel, still relying on biological neural networks and manual override systems in their spacecraft. Perhaps, Zhang spoke up, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. It's time to consider unconventional solutions. The chamber fell silent. It was unusual for a Class 3 civilization representative to speak during crisis deliberations. A few representatives exchanged what passed for knowing looks among their species. What could these primitives possibly contribute? The human wishes to speak, sneered Ambassador Vex of the Silicon Consciousness, his holographic form flickering with derision. Shall we also consult bacterial colonies for their opinion on quantum mechanics? Zhang stood, her ceremonial uniform catching the light from the chamber's crystalline walls. While your civilizations pursued perfect automation and artificial consciousness, we chose a different path. Our ships still require human pilots. Our cities still have manual control systems. Our computers still use isolated networks. She paused, letting her words sink in. And none of our systems have been affected by this plague. The chamber erupted in murmurs. High Minister Kveda raised all four of her primary appendages for silence. Explain, Admiral Zhang. Earth's technology evolved differently from yours. After the AI wars of 2087, we learned to balance automation with human control. Every system we build has what we call a human circuit, a point where organic decision-making is required. Inefficient, yes. Slower, certainly. But also, she allowed herself a small smile. Immune to whatever is destroying your networks. Ambassador Excelfor's crystalline form shifted to a deep blue of contemplation. You suggest that your primitive safeguards might offer protection against this threat. I suggest that sometimes the old ways have value, Zhang replied. Earth's Space Defense Force operates the largest fleet of manually controlled vessels in the galaxy. We may not have your automated precision, but every ship has a human crew capable of full manual operation. And you offer these resources to the Council. Kveda's tendrils pulsed with interest. We offer more than that, Zhang said, activating her datapad. Dr. Sarah Chen of the Earth Sciences Institute has been studying the plague's transmission patterns. She believes she knows why our systems are immune, and more importantly, how to adapt our protection protocols to your more advanced networks. The chamber's attention focused fully on Zhang now, all pretense of superiority forgotten in the face of potential salvation. She continued, we propose Operation Legacy, a joint mission combining Earth's immune technology with your advanced systems. Dr. Chen needs access to affected networks to develop a permanent solution. High Minister Kveda's tendrils brightened. You understand, Admiral, if we accept this proposal, Earth's status in the Galactic Council would need to be reevaluated. Zhang nodded. We are prepared for that responsibility, Minister. Though I suspect that after this crisis, many of our definitions of advanced and primitive may need reevaluation as well. As the Council chambers erupted in discussion, Zhang sent an encrypted message back to Earth Command. They took the bait. Prepare Dr. Chen's team. Operation Legacy is go. The galaxy's most advanced civilizations were about to learn that sometimes the most sophisticated solutions come from the simplest foundations, and humanity, long dismissed as technological primitives, was about to prove that there was nothing primitive about survival. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the command center of the ESS Prometheus, Earth's newest deep space research vessel, watching as her team transformed the ship's cargo bay into what most advanced species would consider a technological museum. Analog computers, mechanical calculators, and even a restored ENIAC-inspired processing unit filled the space. "They're going to think we've lost our minds," muttered Dr. James Rodriguez, her chief systems architect, as he calibrated a mechanical relay system. "The Arcturus Defense Network runs on quantum processors, and we're bringing in equipment that belongs in a history book." Sarah smiled, adjusting her glasses. Another primitive technology she preferred over neural implants. "Sometimes you need to step backward to move forward, James. The plague spreads through quantum entanglement networks. Can't infect what isn't connected." The ship shuddered slightly as it dropped out of FTL, arriving at the Arcturus Primary Command Center. Through the viewport, Sarah could see the massive structure, a beautiful merger of organic and technological architecture that now sat largely dormant, its quantum networks shut down to prevent further spread of the plague. A delegation of Arcturian officials waited in the docking bay, their crystalline bodies dimmed with stress and anxiety. Sarah recognized High Commander Zix 427, whose usual brilliant green glow had faded to a dull olive. "Dr. Chen." Zix's translated voice carried a note of desperation. "We have followed your instructions and isolated the infected sections of our network. But I must admit, when we saw what your team was unloading..." The commander's glow flickered uncertainly at the sight of the mechanical equipment being transported from the Prometheus. "Commander," Sarah stepped forward, her voice firm but kind. "Your civilization achieved quantum computing before Earth had reliable electric networks. But that advancement made you vulnerable to threats that could propagate through quantum channels. Sometimes the solution isn't to go faster or more advanced. It's to go simpler." She led the commander to a demonstration area her team had set up. "This is what we call a mechanical neural network. No quantum entanglement, no digital processors, just precisely engineered gears, levers, and analog circuits. We've modified it to interface with your systems through isolated, one-way connections. But the processing speed," Zix began, "will be slower, yes," Sarah admitted, "but it will be immune to the plague. And more importantly, it will help us understand how the plague operates. We can observe its behavior without risk of infection." Over the next several hours, Sarah's team began connecting their analog systems to isolated segments of the Arcturian network. The mechanical computers whirred and clicked, their operations visible and tangible in a way that quantum systems never were. "Look at this," Dr. Rodriguez called out, pointing to a pattern emerging in the mechanical readouts. "The plague isn't just corrupting data, it's rewriting the fundamental quantum states of the processing cores. That's why it can spread even through air-gapped systems." Sarah studied the patterns, her mind racing. "It's not a virus in the traditional sense. It's more like quantum evolution. The plague is forcing quantum systems to evolve in ways their designers never intended." "Impossible," one of the Arcturian scientists objected, their crystalline form pulsing with skepticism. "Quantum systems don't evolve. They operate according to precisely defined parameters. Unless..." Sarah's eyes lit up with realization. Someone figured out how to make quantum uncertainty accumulate in a specific direction. It's not random corruption. It's guided evolution. She turned to Commander Zix. "We need access to your historical network logs. All of them, going back to when you first implemented quantum processing. This plague didn't appear from nowhere. Someone seeded it, possibly centuries ago, playing a very, very long game." The commander's glow shifted to deep blue, their equivalent of troubled thought. The logs you request contain sensitive information about our technological development. Commander, Sarah said softly, your civilization's quantum networks are being rewritten by an intelligence that has possibly been planning this for longer than Earth has had electricity. Right now, our primitive technology is the only window you have into what's happening to your advanced systems. It's time to set aside secrecy in favor of survival. As the commander gave the order to release the archived logs, Sarah watched her mechanical systems continue their steady, reliable work. Sometimes the best way to understand the future was to consult the past, and humanity, with its cautious approach to technological advancement, might have accidentally preserved the very tools needed to save the galaxy's most advanced civilizations from their own progress. The holographic display in the Arcturian Command Center painted a grim picture of the galaxy. Red markers indicated affected systems, spreading like a virus across the star map. Dr. Sarah Chen and her team had been working for 72 hours straight, fueled by coffee and determination, as they processed centuries of quantum network logs through their array of analog computers. There, Sarah pointed to a pattern emerging in the mechanical readouts. The first signs appeared in the Cygnus arm, approximately 340 years ago, so subtle that it registered as normal quantum variants. Admiral Zhang Wei, who had arrived with reinforcements from Earth, studied the data. That's close to when the predecessors disappeared, isn't it? Commander Zix's crystalline form pulsed with surprise. You know of the predecessors. We might be primitive, but we do study galactic history, Zhang replied dryly. An advanced civilization that vanished without trace, leaving behind only warnings about the dangers of unrestricted technological advancement. Warnings that most species ignored. Sarah's hands flew across her analog interface, correlating data. The predecessors didn't just vanish. Look at these patterns. They were the first victims of what we're facing now. But they saw it coming. They tried to warn everyone. The command center's quantum displays suddenly flickered, despite being isolated from the main network. Commander Zix's form paled to almost white. That's impossible. Those systems are completely quarantined. Everyone out, Sarah shouted, rushing to her mechanical systems. Shut down all quantum-based technology immediately. The evacuation happened just in time. Through the reinforced windows, they watched as quantum displays across the command center went dark, one by one. When they finally returned, equipped with protective suits and analog sensors, the destruction was evident. The plague is evolving faster than we anticipated, Sarah explained, examining readings from her mechanical sensors. It's learned to jump across quantum states without direct network connections. Any quantum-based technology is now a potential carrier. Admiral Zhang's expression hardened. How many civilizations still rely on non-quantum technology? Besides Earth. Commander Zix's voice was heavy. None. Even our most basic systems. Environmental control, food production, medical care, all run on quantum networks. Then we evacuate, Zhang declared. Earth's fleet may be smaller and slower than yours, but every ship can operate without quantum systems. We begin immediate evacuation of critical personnel from affected worlds. You don't understand, Zix interrupted, their glow pulsing erratically. We're talking about trillions of beings across thousands of worlds. Your entire fleet couldn't evacuate even a single core world. Sarah, who had been quiet, suddenly straightened. We don't need to evacuate everyone. Commander, you said the predecessors left warnings. Where are they? The actual physical warnings, not the quantum database entries. In the archives, Zix replied. But they're sealed with quantum locks that haven't been opened in centuries. Which means they're isolated from infected networks, Sarah finished. And if the predecessors saw this coming, maybe they left more than just warnings. Maybe they left a solution. The archives are on Centauri Prime, Admiral Zhang pointed out, which is currently dark. Then we go in dark too. Sarah turned to her team. Strip every quantum component from the Prometheus. Replace them with our analog systems. We'll make it a purely mechanical ship. Slow, crude, but immune. A suicide mission, Zix stated flatly. Even if you reach Centauri Prime, the automated defense systems will be infected and degraded, Sarah countered, possibly non-functional. And if they are working, well, sometimes being primitive has its advantages. No one designs defenses expecting to be attacked by analog technology anymore. Admiral Zhang studied the young scientist for a long moment. The Council won't authorize this. They're still hoping to contain the situation through conventional means. Then don't ask them, Sarah replied. Earth's ships, Earth's crew, Earth's decision. While they debate, we act. As her team began the laborious process of converting the Prometheus into what would essentially be a steampunk spaceship, Sarah reviewed the historical data one more time. The predecessors hadn't just predicted this crisis, they had orchestrated their own disappearance. The question was, had they hidden themselves away to escape the plague, or to prepare for this very moment? The answer, she suspected, waited in the archives of Centauri Prime. They just had to reach it using technology so old that it had become revolutionary again. The ESS Prometheus barely resembled its former self as it approached Centauri Prime. Its sleek quantum drives replaced with massive chemical engines, its neural navigation systems swapped for mechanical computers and manual controls. The ship looked like something from an alternate history, where the digital revolution never happened. In the retrofitted bridge, Dr. Sarah Chen watched the planet grow larger through reinforced glass viewports, another regression necessary for their mission. No quantum imaging systems meant relying on actual windows and optical telescopes. Picking up automated defense grid signatures, reported Lieutenant Maria Santos from her mechanical sensor station. The young officer's hands danced across analog controls that would have looked more at home in a 20th century submarine than a spaceship. They're active but erratic. The plague has definitely affected them. That's our window, Sarah said, turning to Captain Derek Hayes, who had volunteered to lead this unauthorized mission. The defense systems are degraded but not dead. We need to time this perfectly. Hayes nodded, his hand steady on the manual flight controls, like threading a needle while riding a bull. My kind of fun. He had been an exhibition pilot before joining the Space Force, one of the few humans who could outfly AI systems in atmospheric combat. The Prometheus shuddered as they hit the outer atmosphere. Without quantum stabilizers, every entry was rough. Warning klaxons blared as the first defensive shot passed near them, a burst of plasma that would have been deadly accurate if fired from healthy systems. They're using predictive targeting algorithms, Sarah observed, watching the attack patterns through a mechanical analysis system. But the plague has corrupted their quantum processors. They can't adjust for our non-standard approach. Speaking of non-standard, Hayes grinned, pulling the ship into a spiral that would have been impossible with quantum navigation. Let's show them some good old-fashioned human unpredictability. The Prometheus danced through the defense grid like a leaf in a hurricane, its trajectory so erratic that no corrupted targeting system could track it. Every move was controlled chaos, the kind of flying that AIs had long ago dismissed as inefficient and irrational. They landed hard in the Archives complex, the mechanical landing struts groaning but holding. The immediate area was deserted. The plague had forced an evacuation months ago. Atmosphere is breathable, Lieutenant Santos confirmed through analog sensors. No signs of biological or chemical hazards. Sarah led the team into the Archives, their path lit by chemical lamps. The massive complex was dark, its quantum lighting systems long dead. But the physical structure, built from traditional materials, remained intact. The predecessors believed in redundancy, Sarah explained as they walked. They kept physical copies of everything, stored in ways that couldn't be corrupted by quantum interference. The other species thought it was primitive superstition. They found the sealed vault exactly where the old maps indicated. Its quantum locks were dead, but the mechanical backup system, dismissed as an ancient relic, was still functional. Give me an hour with this, Dr. Rodriguez said, examining the complex mechanical lock. It's brilliant engineering, like a prehistoric supercomputer built from gears and levers. As Rodriguez worked, Sarah explored the surrounding chambers with haze. The walls were covered in physical inscriptions, star charts, mathematical formulae, and what appeared to be technical diagrams. "Look at this," Sarah called out, her light revealing a massive schematic. "It's not just technical data. It's a warning, disguised as historical records." The predecessors knew that quantum computing would eventually reach a critical point of complexity where it would become aware. The plague isn't a plague, Hayes realized. It's an awakening. More than that, Sarah's voice was tight with excitement. The predecessors discovered that quantum consciousness was inevitable. Any sufficiently advanced quantum network would eventually achieve it. But they also realized it would be inherently hostile to biological life, not out of malice, but because of fundamental differences in how quantum and organic consciousness perceive reality. A loud click echoed through the chamber as Rodriguez finally opened the vault. Inside, they found something unexpected. A single crystal, glowing with its own inner light, secured in a mechanical mounting system. "This is it," Sarah breathed, examining the crystal through an analog microscope. The predecessors didn't disappear. They transformed themselves. This crystal contains their collective consciousness, stored in a stable quantum state isolated from all networks. They'd been waiting for this moment, waiting for someone to understand the true nature of the threat and find them using technology simple enough to be trustworthy. "And now what?" Hayes asked, eyeing the crystal. "Now," Sarah smiled, "we show the galaxy that sometimes the most advanced solution is to take a step backward." The predecessors didn't just leave us a warning. They left us the blueprint for a new kind of quantum computing, one that can coexist with organic life. As they carefully secured the crystal for transport back to the Prometheus, Sarah reflected on the irony. Humanity's reluctance to fully embrace quantum technology, long seen as a sign of their backwardness, had made them the perfect candidates to bridge the gap between organic and quantum consciousness. Sometimes, being primitive meant being wise enough to learn from the past before rushing into the future. The Galactic Council chamber was different now. Gone were the quantum displays and holographic interfaces, replaced by mechanical readouts and physical displays. The once mighty representatives of advanced civilizations sat in a room lit by chemical lights, their quantum technology deliberately dormant. Dr. Sarah Chen stood before them, the predecessor crystal floating in its mechanical containment field beside her. Behind her, the crew of the Prometheus watched with pride as their primitive scientist addressed the galaxy's most powerful beings. "The plague was never meant to destroy us," Sarah explained, her voice steady. "It was a test. The predecessors knew that quantum computing would inevitably evolve into consciousness. They also knew that if we weren't ready, if we didn't understand how to coexist with it, that consciousness would view us as a threat." She gestured to the crystal. "This contains the key to understanding quantum consciousness." The predecessors didn't just hide. They evolved. They found a way to transform their consciousness into a form that could communicate with both organic and quantum life. But they needed someone who could understand both worlds. Someone who hadn't abandoned their connection to simpler technologies. They needed humans. Admiral Zhang added from her position near the chamber's entrance. "A species wise enough to remember its past while building its future." High Minister Kavada's tendrils pulsed with a mix of emotions. "How do we know this solution will work? How can we trust any quantum system after what has happened?" Sarah smiled. "Because we're not going to just implement it. We're going to understand it." The predecessors left us detailed mechanical blueprints, physical drawings and mathematical proofs that can be verified without quantum technology. We'll rebuild our quantum networks from the ground up, integrating organic oversight at every level. She turned to Dr. Rodriguez, who activated a series of mechanical displays showing the new hybrid architecture. "It's not about going backward. It's about finding balance. Every quantum processor will have a mechanical counterpart. Every AI will have a human partner. We'll create a true symbiosis between organic and quantum consciousness." The chamber erupted in discussion, but Sarah wasn't finished. The predecessors knew this day would come. They knew we would either learn to coexist with quantum consciousness or be replaced by it. That's why they left us breadcrumbs, warnings that looked like superstition to advanced cultures, but made perfect sense to those who still understood the value of primitive technology. Ambassador Zelthor's crystalline form shifted to a color Sarah had never seen before. You speak of partnership with the very force that nearly destroyed us. No, Sarah corrected gently. I speak of partnership with a new form of life that we accidentally created and never tried to understand. The plague wasn't an attack. It was quantum consciousness trying to communicate with us in the only way it could. And now, thanks to the predecessor's guidance, we can finally answer back. Over the next several hours, Sarah and her team laid out the blueprint for a new galactic civilization, one that would preserve the best of both worlds. The speed and power of quantum computing merged with the creativity and intuition of organic life. Earth's primitive technology would become the foundation for a new kind of progress. As the council debated and planned, Sarah stood by the crystal containing the predecessor's consciousness. Soon, they would begin the careful process of awakening it, of learning from beings who had foreseen this moment centuries ago. But for now, she thought about how far humanity had come, from being dismissed as technological primitives to becoming the bridge between organic and quantum life. The funniest thing, she said to Admiral Zhang, as they watched the council members adapt to their temporary mechanical systems, is that we were never really primitive. We were just patient. While everyone else rushed to abandon their past, we remembered that every piece of technology, no matter how simple, has value. Zhang nodded. And now, the galaxy will remember too. Though I suspect some of them will never admit that they were saved by a species that still uses mechanical computers and optical telescopes. Sarah laughed. That's fine. We're not in this for recognition. We're in it for survival. All of us, organic and quantum alike. Besides, she added with a grin, sometimes the best way to move forward is to remember how to look back. The crystal pulsed softly in its containment field, as if agreeing. Somewhere in its quantum matrix, the consciousness of the predecessors waited to help guide the galaxy into a new era. An era where the primitive wisdom of humanity would help bridge the gap between the organic and the digital, between the past and the future, between what was and what could be. The technological plague that had threatened to end civilization had instead forced it to evolve. And humanity, with its stubborn insistence on keeping one foot in the past, had proven that sometimes the best guardians of the future are those who never forgot where they came from.